Welcome to Echoes of Truth. If you love chilling mysteries, hit that like button and subscribe now to uncover more secrets. I never wanted to tell this story. For 3 years, I've tried to forget everything that happened at Evergreen Center, tried to convince myself it was all in my head. But after what I discovered last week, after finding those files, I realize I can't stay silent anymore. People need to know the truth about what really goes on behind those ornate Victorian doors and why 6 patients have vanished without a trace since 2019. It started in October 2021, during one of the wettest autumns Seattle had seen in decades. I was barely functioning after my startup's collapse triggered a complete mental breakdown. Panic attacks, insomnia, paranoid thoughts, the works. My sister finally convinced me to seek help, and that's how I ended up sitting in Dr. Sarah Winter's office at Evergreen Therapy Center for my initial consultation. The building itself should have been my first warning sign. A massive Victorian mansion perched on a hill in Capitol Hill, all dark wood and Gothic spires reaching into perpetually grey skies. But Dr. Winter seemed different from other therapists I'd tried. Warm, attentive, genuinely interested in helping me rebuild my life. Her office was a cozy refuge of soft lighting and comfortable chairs, with large windows overlooking the courtyard's ancient maple trees. "Your anxiety stems from a deep-seated fear of loss of control," she said during our 3rd session, her voice carrying that perfect blend of authority and compassion. "We'll work together to help you regain that sense of agency." I started attending group therapy sessions twice a week, in addition to my private appointments. That's where I met Marcus Reed. He stood out immediately, tall, intense, with dark circles under his eyes that matched my own. We bonded over coffee after group one day, sharing our respective stories of professional failure and psychological collapse. "Something feels off about this place," Marcus whispered one rainy afternoon as we huddled under the building's covered entrance. "Have you noticed how many patients just disappear? No goodbyes? No explanations?" I brushed off his concerns at first. Marcus had admitted to struggling with paranoid thoughts, just like me, but then he missed our next coffee meetup, and the next group session, and the next. When I asked Dr. Winters about his absence, she smiled that practice smile and said he'd decided to discontinue treatment. But Marcus had told me just days before how helpful he found the sessions, how he was finally starting to feel like himself again. That's when I started paying attention. Really paying attention. The first red flag was Cameron Walsh, the maintenance guy. I kept catching him lurking around corners during my sessions, supposedly checking thermostats or fixing light fixtures. But his eyes followed patients too intently, his clipboard more prop than tool. Once I could have sworn I saw him slipping something into his pocket as he left an empty therapy room, something that glinted like metal. I started arriving early for my appointments, lingering late afterward. I noticed things, like how the heavy fire doors in the basement corridor were always locked, despite building code requiring them to remain accessible. Or how certain rooms on the 3rd floor were permanently under renovation, yet I never saw any actual construction work being done. The breaking point came when I overheard a heated argument between Dr. Winters and Detective Laura Reeves in the parking lot one evening. I was leaving my session when their voices carried across the wet pavement. 6 cases in 3 years isn't a coincidence, Detective Reeves was saying, her voice tight with frustration. These people had families, lives. They didn't just vanish into thin air.
Wounded niche?
As I've explained repeatedly, mental health patients sometimes choose to disconnect from their previous lives, Dr. Winters replied coolly. We respect their privacy and autonomy. And the fact that none of them have accessed their bank accounts or used their phones since disappearing. Detective, unless you have a warrant. I ducked behind my car before they could spot me. Heart pounding. 6 cases. 6 people like Marcus, gone without a trace. I spent the next week building a spreadsheet, cross-referencing local missing persons reports with what I could remember about former Evergreen patients. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Every victim had been in intensive treatment, showing significant improvement before their disappearance. All had few close family connections. All had substantial savings or insurance policies. I knew I needed proof, something concrete to take to the authorities. The opportunity came when Cameron Walsh left his maintenance keycard unattended during lunch break. The risk was enormous, but I managed to swipe it and make a quick copy at the hardware store down the street, returning the original before he noticed it missing. That night, I waited until the cleaning crew left before using the duplicate to access the building's restricted areas. The basement was a maze of narrow corridors and storage rooms, most filled with ordinary supplies and old furniture. But one door was different. Heavy steel with an electronic lock, hidden behind a false wall of filing cabinets. My hands shook as I sweep your card. The room beyond was small and clinical, with bare concrete walls and a drain in the center of the floor. Metal cabinets lined one wall, filled with patient files, far more than there should have been for a facility this size. And these weren't ordinary medical records. Each folder contained detailed financial information, insurance policies, property records, notes about family connections and likelihood of being reported missing. I found Marcus's file, and then I found the others. All 6 missing patients. Their folders marked with small red dots. My blood ran cold when I saw my own name in a fresh folder. Similar financial details already compiled, a red dot waiting to be added. But the true horror lay in the final cabinet. Dozens of vials of clear liquid, syringes, and a notebook filled with Dr. Winter's precise handwriting, detailing dosages and effects. Experimental treatments, she called them. Ways to help resistant patients achieve permanent peace. I was so focused on photographing the evidence with my phone that I didn't hear the door open behind me. I had such high hopes for your treatment, Alex. Dr. Winters stood in the doorway, Cameron Walsh's hulking form beside her. In her hand was a syringe filled with clear liquid. Your anxiety made you an ideal candidate, she continued, her voice carrying that same professional warmth that had once seemed so comforting. But I'm afraid you've complicated things considerably. What happened next is still a blur of adrenaline and instinct. As they advanced into the room, I hurled a metal filing tray at the overhead lights, plunging us into darkness. In the chaos, I managed to slip past them and slammed the heavy door shut, trapping them inside. I ran through the dark corridors, their shouts echoing behind me. At the main stairs, I collided with someone, Detective Reeves, working late again on the disappearance cases. "They're in the basement?" I gasped, showing her the photos on my phone. "The evidence, all of it!" Before she could respond, another voice cut through the darkness. "Laura, thank God you're here." Dr. Winters emerged from the basement door, perfectly composed despite the situation. "Alex is having a severe paranoid episode. We need to get them safely contained before—" "Save it, Sarah." Detective Reeves's voice was ice-cold as she drew her weapon. "We've been building this case for months. Alex just gave us the final piece." That's when the truth hit me. A truth even more twisted than I'd imagined. Detective Reeves wasn't investigations. She The gun wasn't pointed at Dr. Winters, it was pointed at me. I dove behind a marble column as the first shot rang out. Years of playing video games finally paid off as I zigzagged through the building's maze-like halls, bullets splintering wood panels behind me. I could hear them coordinating, trying to cut off my escape routes. My salvation came from the most unexpected source. Cameron Walsh, of all people, appeared at a crucial moment, not to stop me, but to help. Turns out he'd been gathering evidence too, working with a real police task force. The maintenance job was his cover. "The building's surrounded," he said as we barricaded ourselves in a third-floor office. "Real cops are on their way. We just have to survive the next 5 minutes." Those 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. Dr. Winters and Detective Reeves tried everything. Threats, manipulation, promises of immunity. When those failed, they tried to burn us out, setting fire to the antique carpeting outside our door. The smoke was getting thick when we heard the sirens, saw the flash of red and blue through the windows. The cavalry had arrived. The aftermath revealed horrors beyond even my worst suspicions. The basement contained evidence of dozens of murders stretching back decades. Dr. Winters had been running her scheme at multiple facilities across the country, using different aliases, always targeting vulnerable patients with financial assets and minimal family connections. Detective Reeves had been her cleanup crew, using her police credentials to derail investigations. They'd made millions from their victims' accounts and insurance policies. But the final twist came during the trial, when Dr. Winters' true identity was revealed. She wasn't just a murderous therapist. She was the sole survivor of a similar killing spree at a mental hospital in 1985. The original killer had been her own psychiatrist. She hadn't just copied his methods, she'd perfected them. 2. I still attend therapy, though at a different facility now. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever fully trust another mental health professional. But I'm writing this story because silence only protects the monsters. Marcus deserved better. All of them deserved better. The old Evergreen Center building was demolished last month. They're building a community center in its place. But sometimes, driving past that hill at night, I swear I can still see those Gothic spires reaching into the darkness, still hear echoes of all the stories that died within those walls. And I remember that the scariest monsters aren't the ones that hide under our beds or in our closets. They're the ones that hide behind degrees and credentials, behind caring smiles and comforting words. The ones that know exactly how to turn our minds against us. Because in the end, the most dangerous predators are the ones who understand precisely how we think, what we fear, and what we're willing to believe to feel safe. The truth is closer than you think. Like and subscribe for the next chapter, and tell me in the comments, what would you do if you found those files?